Hello, fintech builders and leaders. So today we start a new series of podcasts, and that is Guts, Grit, and the FinTech. So this is the show for strong-minded entrepreneurs who are not afraid to transform the financial industry, who are not afraid to take the risk and to get the rewards, and to build a brighter financial future. And I'm Vasyl Soloshchuk from INSART, the FinTech engineering partner. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the dynamic and insightful Greg Palmer, host for Finovate Group. Greg, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So Greg is marketing mastermind of Finovate Conference, which is the primary demo show for fintech startups. And Greg coached over 1,000 of entrepreneurs as speakers to present their companies to an influential audience of bankers, investors, analysts, and venture capitalists. And Greg, thank you for being here with us today. And my very first question will be, so what do you think is the biggest mistake that all entrepreneurs make during their public speeches?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think the honest answer is there are simply too many common mistakes to kind of list them all. But, one of the things that was really important to us. So Finovate is a conference based on live demos of new and innovative pieces of technology. And one of the things that we're famous for is we put companies under, a clock, just 7 minutes to show what they can do. And we've seen a lot of companies who've been able to use this format really well, a lot of speakers who've been able to get up there and really clearly advocate for their companies and make the audience understand what it is they're working on, and most importantly, why they should care about what they're working on. But we know that it's something which is outside the comfort zone for a lot of the people who are on our stage. And so we started offering coaching for them. We've actually been doing that for quite a while. And I think the biggest thing that I always recommend to any person who's about to speak publicly, who maybe isn't comfortable with it, maybe it's not their favorite thing to do, the first step is always to be really sure about what your own messaging should be, and start out with a really concrete goal of what you're trying to accomplish with your presentation, whether it's at an event like Finovate where you've got a wide variety of people in the audience, or it's a very targeted pitch session to a room full of venture capitalists, or maybe even only one or two VCs. Coming into any speaking engagement with a really clear understanding of, here's what success looks like for me, here's what I'm trying to help you understand, is absolutely massive. And so many people blow right past that first step and start thinking, what am I going to show? What maybe creative elements can I add to it? But starting at that first step, what am I trying to accomplish, is frequently overlooked, and the results can be devastating because your presentation will end up lacking any kind of focus or coherent ability. Ultimately, it makes you very forgetful, or it makes you easy to forget, I should say, in the eyes of the audience.
So are we talking about the specific purpose that they want to achieve, and why do you think it's happening?
Well, I think one of the honest truths is that most people never receive much coaching when it comes to public speaking. In our educational system and educational systems around the world, we prioritize math skills. When we come to language arts, we prioritize reading, we prioritize writing papers. When you first get a paper to write, you'll have a teacher who will kind of walk you through, this is how you can structure that paper. Here's some ideas for how to make, introductory paragraph really compelling, how to make the body of your paper really compelling. People typically don't get that same kind of support when it comes to public speaking. In many cases, a teacher will just say, you have 2 weeks, put together a presentation, have it be 15 minutes long, and then good luck. We'll come back to me in 2 weeks when it's ready. They don't give you that same kind of step-by-step, here's how to organize your thoughts, here's how to create something that's easy for an audience to listen to. And that's where a lot of the coaching that I do comes in, because there are systems in place that make it easy for somebody who's not super comfortable at public speaking to still be effective when it comes to communicating their own goals and potentially win allies over in an audience when you've got a limited amount of time to make somebody care about what you're working on.
Yeah. So okay. So look, I work with many different fintech founders as well, and I frequently hear something like that. So why do I need actually to do this public speaking? So if I have a really great purpose of my product, and I have built a really great product, so the product will sell itself. So why do I need to have to actually do this public speaking at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's something which I think any founder will tell you. There are these moments that you can't avoid, right? You can work on a product, you can build something that's really effective. It can be the best product of all time, but eventually you're going to find yourself in a position where, in order to continue growing your company, you're going to be standing in front of somebody with a limited amount of time to make them understand and care about you. And so you can think of all of this work that you do to build this company, you put all this effort in, it will eventually come to this point where all of a sudden you're standing in front of a venture capitalist and you've got 3 minutes to capture their attention, make them care about you, or you're at an event where you're presenting your company publicly for the first time. These critical inflection points occur in person, they occur in a public speaking format, and as much work as you do behind the scenes to get ready for it, you will have to get through those moments, or you simply won't get the funding that you need, or the customers that you need, or the partners, whatever the case may be. Eventually, you will find yourself in that position where you have to stand in front of a group of people who haven't heard of you. And you have a very limited amount of time to capture their attention and use that attention for a productive end for your own goals.
Yeah, but sometimes it can be like that. When you speak, you don't build. And if you're a founder, you have a lack of time and you have a very limited resources, small team, and you need maybe to focus on building really great product. And so, do you think that coaching might encourage entrepreneurs to focus more on presentational skills rather than on the specific substance and quality of the fintech product that they built?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly it's a balancing act, because a great presentation with a shoddy product behind it is not ultimately going to be successful. You
Yes,
might capture
yes.
some attention in the short term, but ultimately, the venture capitalists who will be potentially won over in your 5 minute speech will ultimately figure out that there's nothing actually behind that speech, that you're all flash and no substance, as they say. The same can be on the opposite side, where you can have a really good presentation, but if you don't get that flash element to it, you don't have that ability to say, here's why you should care about it. You can have really strong technology that will end up kind of dying on the vine, as they say. And this is something which I've seen so many times at Finovate. And it's really painful every time when I see a company up on stage who I know has really strong technology. I know that there are many people in the audience who could use that technology right now. And for whatever reason, they don't end up connecting because the person isn't able to explain it from stage in the way that will be compelling. And so this missed opportunity then arises, where you've got excellent technology that's not being used because the people who could use it don't understand why they would want to use it, or they don't understand how easy it is to use. All of these things are really critically important as well. So you really have to have both. Certainly, a good presentation is not a substitute for having a good product, but a good product without being able to present it well will ultimately not be successful either.
Yeah, but isn't it the vice versa? If you have a really great product, so it should be self-explanatory. So, and if you can't explain in short term very clearly what is your purpose, what problem is solved by your product, so maybe this is a problem around the product, but not about how it's presented.
Well, I mean, there's a little secret that I want to tell you right now, which is that even the most intelligent people that I work with are really terrible when it comes to listening comprehension. And the honest truth is, they're not willing to put in the work. If you're a venture capitalist and you're getting literally hundreds of pitches a month with somebody saying, pay attention to my technology, you can't possibly do the due diligence that you need to on all of those 100 different people coming out to you. The ones that are going to rise to the top of your own estimation as a venture capitalist are going to be the ones who are able to really quickly and clearly articulate why they have a really unique value proposition. And one of the things that's true in the fintech space is there are a lot of competitors for everybody. And ultimately, people on the other end are human beings as well. We need things to be made very easy for us from a presentation standpoint to be able to understand them. And even again, really intelligent people, their minds will start to wander. They'll lose focus. We sometimes have this image of these senior level executives at financial institutions or senior venture capitalists who are almost robots in our mind. You think, well, these people will understand anything. If I just kind of point them to my webpage or give them the right pitch deck, they can read through it. Some of them probably will, but the vast majority of them don't operate in that way. They have such limited attention for each company that they engage with that it really does come down to a crucial 2 or 3 minutes in most cases. And the question then becomes, how do you set yourself up well so that those 2 or 3 minutes buy you an additional 10 minutes of time to listen to you? And that from there, maybe you can get them to actually dive in and engage with the more intricate nature of your presentation deck or what's on your webpage. But before a VC or an executive is going to put in that effort to learn about your company, you have to hook them first, and you'll have a very limited amount of time to do that.
Okay, so speaking about the venture capitalist attention, we're talking about fintech here. So, do you see any difference between fintech and non-fintech industries while you're doing the public speech?
Yeah, well, certainly the bulk of my experience comes within the financial technology sector. So that's most of the group that I could speak to. But I think, the big difference comes from the fact that the financial industry has certain regulations in place, certain safeguards in place, which you have to be aware of. In the early days of Finovate, we saw a lot of companies who were putting together really compelling technology that banks could never actually use because it wasn't regulatory compliant. There were all these issues which they hadn't taken into account. And so they would develop all these products. It would be really pretty. They'd show it to a group of bankers, and the bankers would say, "Oh man, I wish I could use that technology, but unfortunately I can't." And that's probably the biggest difference between fintech and other areas is there is that extra layer that you have to go through. This compliance nature, whatever market you're in, whatever geography you're operating in, there will be somebody who will come in and say, hey, are you actually doing this in a way that is protecting consumer privacy, is protecting the consumer financial health and things of that nature. Other industries don't have that. In other industries, you can kind of operate with a, we'll just break it and see what happens, kind of asking forgiveness instead of permission. Financial technology, you really have to be careful up front. So that's probably the biggest difference in the fintech space.
Okay, so anyway, when you do public speaking, you have a learning curve as a founder, as an entrepreneur. And what do you think? How many times you actually need to fail to master the presentation skills?
Zero, I think. I think you don't ever need to fail. And that's one of the crucial moments, crucial pieces of my coaching is that there are things that you can do which create a safety net, which means that it's impossible to really fail. So I think, certainly the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more times you go through the process, the easier it becomes. But I think a lot of people are really scared of public speaking because they kind of see this potential downside, this, oh my God, what happens if type of thinking. And the honest truth is that with a little bit of preparation, with a little bit of strategizing, there's a lot you can do to safeguard yourself against that type of catastrophe. And the biggest picture is, you don't have to love public speaking. You don't have to be a natural showman or really even enjoy it that much to be effective. At the end of the day, these type of presentations are not about creating entertainment value. They're not about, putting something together that people are going to laugh at or it's going to make them cry like they would at a movie theater. It's about conveying information in a way that's easy to digest. And when you look at it from that standpoint, it takes a lot of the pressure off. I don't have to entertain you. I have to advocate for myself. I have to get you to understand what I'm working on. And again, I don't have to be an amazing showman to make that happen. I don't even have to like it very much. There's a lot of techniques that you can learn that make it very possible so that your first time out can actually be a successful one. And then from there, you can just keep getting better and better.
Yeah, and I think until you do your first public speaking, you don't know whether you can do this or you can't do this, or whether you need the coaching. And anyway, people are afraid of doing this first failure. So how we could overcome this
Well, I think if you think about it, like if you're going to
psychologically?
go swimming, yeah, a lot of it is a psychological edge. But if you're going to go swimming, you wouldn't just jump into a pool without having somebody teach you a little bit about how to swim first. And unfortunately, we're in a situation where a lot of people are forced to give presentations without ever having had any training, which of course is scary. And when you're looking at something like that, where all of a sudden you have this moment coming up where I know that I'm not prepared for what's about to happen. I haven't experienced this. This is one of those things which will be really psychologically difficult to overcome. It can be very scary. You can have bad dreams about it. You can lose sleep. And the moment before you get up on stage can be a really terrifying one. Now, that said, some element of nerves is normal. It's a part of the process. I do a lot of public speaking, but I still, before I'm about to go on stage, I still have that little surge of adrenaline, which says, hey, you're about to do something important. You never want to completely lose that, because having that little bit of fear, that little bit of adrenaline signifies that you're doing something that you care about. It means that you're thinking this is a big deal, and that's normal. That's how it should be. The question is, how can you control those feelings? How can you use them to your advantage? And how can you get yourself into a place where, even though it's a little bit scary, you still feel like you have the tools necessary to go and jump in the pool, to continue that analogy?
So can you give us an example? I mean, without naming somebody, but when somebody really failed with their first public speaking experience,
Yeah.
but after all, he or she recovered and really did well.
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, it can happen, right? We live in a world of live demos at our events, and so it's there's no shortage of places where things could potentially go wrong. But I think the biggest pitfalls really come from the fact of the way that the script is laid out. And when you get to an event like Finovate, you can see who's rehearsed and who hasn't, who has put themselves on the timer before and who hasn't. We've seen multiple people get up on stage and they'll spend the first 2 or 3 minutes kind of rambling, talking about things which the audience doesn't care about, saying, here's how the idea for our company was formed. Here's how me and my founder met each other. We had this idea sitting at the park feeding ducks, and we noticed that the way they were swimming led us to. People don't care about that stuff. That's not going to be an effective way of communicating. It might be fun for you to say. It might be a good chance you think, oh, this is a really interesting story that I want to tell. But at the end of the day, that type of introduction is going to put the audience to sleep. It's going to lose their attention before you even really get going. And so there's certainly no shortage of people who've fallen into that pitfall. When somebody kind of comes in and says, actually, here are the pieces to focus on in the introduction. Here's how you can take this 3-minute rambling piece and turn it into a tight 20 seconds that's going to go out and grab the audience's attention. That's a really simple thing you can do to kind of take a presentation which instantly loses the audience's attention and turn it into something which is going to keep the audience's attention. And then ultimately, that's where you have that opportunity to really win an ally in that moment. So there's no shortage of things like this that we could talk about. And a lot of the coaching that I do early on is kind of covering a lot of these common pitfalls that companies can fall into or individual speakers can fall into. But at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is being able to prepare yourself, understanding the logical order to lay out your thoughts. And again, coming back up to that really big picture, what's my high level goal? What am I really hoping that you as an audience member will take from this presentation? And how can I make sure that I'm delivering it to you?
Greg, you work with and you see hundreds of fintech startups and companies every year, and again, there are lots of different trends going on in fintech. But what do you think is the biggest trend right now that every founder must know about, not to lose the game?
Yeah, well, I think so. There's obviously trends come and go in terms of what the technology is, where the technology is at. But some of the really big picture pieces don't come from the technological capability. They come from holes in the existing financial services ecosystem. And right now, there's a major goal for all financial institutions to go out, attract new customers, and bring them into the fold. We are in a situation where a lot of FIs have very old and aging customer bases. They know that the people that's not sustainable. They need to go out and try and attract a new generation of customers, trying to expand who they can go and reach out to. So the biggest trend I think right now, it really comes from companies who are looking to solve this question: how do you bring more people into your bank? And there's a couple of different ways that you can approach that. One is from kind of a sales and marketing standpoint, effectively reaching out and communicating to a group that you haven't been effective at communicating with before. But increasingly, we're seeing fintech that comes in and makes it possible for a bank to engage with whole new universes of customers that they couldn't have engaged with before. And I think, particularly in the financial inclusion space, when you look at alternative forms of credit scoring, alternative ways to lend productively to people who have been excluded from those areas before, that's where there's a lot of work still to be done. And there's this kind of giant pile of customers, potential customers, who are just sitting over here that we need to figure out how can we go and get them and bring them back in. And that's where I think fintech right now is really looking at this, particularly from a credit decisioning and a lending standpoint. We're seeing more and more companies who are more comfortable now lending to people who don't have a good financial history, maybe don't have the highest Equifax score or whatever, but AI and other tools can tell us these people are actually a pretty solid credit risk. I can lend to them and be pretty confident in doing so. And that's where it gets really exciting. That's taking that technology and pointing it towards the biggest problem that banks are facing right now, which is simply expanding their universe of potential customers.
So do you think that the most of the fintechs right now, they are focused more on optimizing the margins for banks, and they eventually making banks richer, but not actually bringing the value to the end user and clients?
Yeah, well, that's, I think, a big problem in financial technology for sure, because ultimately the conferences like Finovate, where we see, bankers coming in who are the ones who ultimately gatekeep and decide which technologies are going to make it into the market. So any technology that does get in front of a consumer probably has to have a bank angle of some kind. It has to be something that works for the banker first and foremost. If it also works for the consumer, great, that's an added bonus. But most of the fintech that makes it through it makes it through because it's advancing a value proposition for the financial institution itself. We saw a lot of companies try to go around financial institutions, try to go around the traditional FIs and say, we can go direct to consumer with our products. It can happen, but it's much, much more difficult. So those success stories are much fewer and far between. I think this is one of those areas where we have to make sure we're not just building financial technology for banks, that we're also building it for consumers. And there are these areas where everybody wins together, and those are the ones that I think are really most exciting when you see that happen. But certainly there is a lot of financial technology that exists just to improve a bank's margin, just to reduce an operating cost or an inefficiency somewhere or an exposure to risk somewhere. And I don't mean to imply that those are somehow lesser fintech companies, but the market can't just be those companies. At the end of the day, it also has to serve the end consumers as well.
So what are the most untapped areas, uncovered areas that can improve financial health and financial freedom of people that you see?
Well, I think if you look at the number of people in the United States alone who are either unbanked or underbanked, it's massive, right? And certainly there are a lot of people who prey on that community, right? There's a lot of companies like check cashing companies or things like that, which will charge you money just to get access to your own paycheck. That type of thing is really difficult, I think, to stomach as an industry. And I think this is where we look at, maybe we have a moral obligation as an industry to do something about that area. But certainly, this is also we know that there are huge numbers of people in these demographics who are good credit risks. And this is where technology can really come in and help you make the case that this is a safe person to lend to. So I think expanding the universe of potential customers is again a really important one. The other piece is that there's going to be this massive transfer of wealth, this generational transfer of wealth, as a lot of older people will pass on and pass their revenue, pass their wealth down to their children or their grandchildren. And there's this giant question right now, which is what happens when that next generation takes control of all of these resources? What are they going to do with it? Where are they going to be investing it? Where are they going to be banking? And so that's where there's this massive battle being fought right now. And people have been talking about kind of winning over the millennial marketplace for a long time. Now millennials are in their 40s and have kids and have mortgages, and the generation still doesn't have a massive amount of allegiance to their parents' financial institutions. So what happens next is a really important question, and this is one where, again, this dogfight is happening. Everybody's competing, recognizing the value of these customers and how they can go and kind of get in front of them is going to be really important as well. So expanding the universe of potential customers through alternative lending, alternative credit decisioning, making sure that your product and company is attractive to that next generation of holders. These are two really crucial areas. And ultimately, a lot of financial institutions will live and die based on the decisions that they make in those two areas.
So actually, why and how diverse and inclusive and resilient financial ecosystem do you think would benefit everyone in this ecosystem?
Sure. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, banks exist for a very simple reason. Banks exist to profit off of credit. That's it. That's it. That's full stop. They want to take money from people. They need deposits in order to be able to lend it out so they can extend the credit. They need to make sure that the people on the other end pay it back so that that credit is ultimately profitable for the financial institution. If you don't have deposits coming in, you can't lend. And if you don't have customers you can lend to, you can't profit off of the credit. So this is where these pieces are all wrapped together. If I can expand the universe of people that I can lend to, my opportunities to profit off of the credit that I can extend rise dramatically. If I can bring more people in to a financial system, then I can have more money that I can ultimately lend out. So the first movers who are able to say, hey, I know that you might not have a financial history that says you can open a checking account, but I can tell because of these technological pieces that you're actually a really good banking customer. If I can pull you away from needing to go to a check cashing establishment or needing to operate in a cash based economy, and can pull you into getting you a credit card, getting you all these other products, then ultimately I'll have more money that I can lend out and a greater pool of people I can lend to. This is how the banks stand to benefit immensely from bringing people in. And of course, those end customers will have a dramatically better life because there's so many advantages to being a banked customer, being able to have access to credit. If you thought about how many of us ultimately bought our first car in cash, very few of us. How many of us ultimately bought our house in cash? These are huge financial benefits that come from being a member in good standing, quote unquote, of the financial system, being a known credit risk. And if you don't have access to those pieces, then you're excluded from the best vehicles, the best houses to buy. All of these things will ultimately play a really huge role there. So I think that's where there's a huge amount of benefit for both the banks and those people if we can get the technology right.
Yeah, so Greg, public speaking is not easy, but it looks like with the a little bit coaching, you can really do it great, and you can do it if you have a purpose. And I really like that you are so dedicated to helping the founders, to fintech founders, be successful with delivering their message to all groups of the financial ecosystem, like banks, credit unions, venture investors, and other stakeholders. So thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you for sharing all your knowledge and experience and insights today. And also, thank you for providing this great platform as Finovate and like a spotlight for fintech founders and for fintech dreamers. So thank you very much, Greg.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I would encourage anybody who's interested, check us out at finovate.com, learn about our upcoming events. You can find information on my public speaking and coaching skills available there as well. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there's something we can do for you. And thanks for having me on the show. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And also, thank you for everyone, all the fintech leaders and builders who listen us today. So really big thank you for joining us today for this very first episode of our Guts, Grit, and the FinTech podcast. And take a moment and register for the next Finovate Sprint. So you can find all the links in the description of this video. And like, share, comment under this video. So this will help us to spread the word. And you also know with whom you must share this video. And let's keep building FinTech and the brighter financial future together. Thank you and bye-bye.
Still watching us and have not subscribed yet? Let's fix this. Also, don't forget to like this video and take a look at the other episodes we have. See ya!